Welcome to Carrying Stones and Digging Holes to Cultivate Consciousness, where, for the next 2 hours, Bridgette Lynn Dolgoff and Kelsey Sweet will be sharing their knowledge and understanding with their own beautifully unique twists on all topics related to helping humanity to achieve betterment of health in body and in mind. Settle yourselves down on this fine Saturday evening. For now, it is time for Bridgette and Kelsey.
All right, everybody. Hey, happy Halloweeny.
Oh.
Yeah. And, so the show must go on, even on Halloween.
And happy
Anyway.
Nevada's Day, too.
Happy what?
Happy Nevada Day. That was yesterday, but...
Oh, yeah.
Nevada's birthday as well.
Yeah. Well, it probably, this continent's birthday is probably much older than when we incorporated and founded it, right? Or somebody else did, so that they could make money. Yeah. Give it a name, a title, a founding date, and then everybody that resides in it can, adhere to all the public policy and tax laws and everything else.
Speed limit.
Yeah, that's a huge one. So what's going on, Mother of Axe?
Oh, man. I just got home from a little kid's Halloween party. So we rounded up some close friends and went to a house, and the kiddos got to dress up and smash some pumpkins and drove my way back here. Yeah.
A little Halloween violence.
Smashing
the pumpkins.
We figured we'd give them the day to run around in costumes and celebrate the holiday, and I don't think any of us are going to do trick-or-treating or any of that tonight. It's just... COVID really throws a wrench into holidays and things. So, yeah, how are you?
I'm good.
How's your week?
There's just been a lot going on since 2014. And I was talking to Ryan yesterday about it, but just like it finally finished up like a long period of just kind of a long shift that all kind of, I think the pivoting point was in 2014 where I could pull Albert Einstein, the definition of insanity, and keep doing the same thing over and over again and keep getting the same result. Or I could hop in my van at that time and go do 10 days of ceremony with my last native teacher who passed on. And so at the last minute, I chose to do that because I really needed change. And then I was on a 6-month kind of vision quest in my van, going from coast to coast, living in rest stops and just all kinds of really intense spiritual being stuff. And then I think I finally have finished it up. So I think I'm finally at the end of it. But the last 2 months have just been super intense. And then I think this week just breakthroughs all the way around, which is good. Even had a huge release out of my shoulder and my spine.
Oh, I bet that's good.
Yeah, on the right side. And it was it hurt for a couple of days, once it let go, but it feels really good. Things are feeling pretty open, and that's kind of it. And then class today was really tough, 2.5 hours. And anthroposophy medicine class. So it was the last one in this series on organs and psychology, how to read people psychologically, to figure out, if their organs are balanced or if, you've got one that's operating higher than the other. And I realized today, because, kidneys in the U.S., everybody has kidney failure. I mean, kidney failure is so unbelievably prevalent that, everywhere you go, like you go on vacation, you can go on a cruise ship. Some friends of mine ended up getting married at this one resort down in Mexico because they offered dialysis. So, because one of their parents, had kidney failure. So, I mean, there's like all these different places that, cater. And nobody ever asked the question of, why, like why kidney failure? And I get that there's a lot of, type 2 diabetes is pretty huge. Diet, just not taking very good care of your kidneys along the way. But today kind of had like a new factor that kind of popped in, and, the kidneys and the adrenals, and just the kind of relationship to some of the hormones that are produced from that area. And it's so cool. Like, I know a lot of people have issues with COVID because of the lockdown, but I'm really thriving because I don't like really studying medicine or any of the work that I do with, American-made education. Even out of the box American-made education is just really not for me. So while COVID's going on, I normally wouldn't be able to travel to Holland and study with this doctor who I've been doing an online course with, if it wasn't for COVID, because they wouldn't be teaching it online, So for me, it's like super great because I have been able to take some courses this year that are only in my dreams courses, right? Only in your dreams. So for me, I've been like thriving big time with COVID. So feeding my brain and my body and my spirit. But it was kind of interesting because adrenal, people that have dominant kidney, there's like personality. For example, kidney people's facial features are usually really thin. Their body types are usually pretty thin. They're over emotional. They're super reactive to the outside environment. They're not always reliable. Never a dull moment. There's always lots of drama, irritable. And the pathology for that one is bipolar.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, think about how many people are operating in, I always see a lot of people when, I was busy in my practice, that always had like adrenal fatigue, but they never really knew what was wrong with them. They thought it was chronic fatigue. Some of them had even been diagnosed with chronic fatigue, and even kind of into mild fibromyalgia, but a lot of it was, adrenal exhaustion. So he said that, in his practice that sometimes people will show up, with heart, like normal doctors, regular mainstream doctors would say, oh, well, that's, heart, here's heart medication to regulate that. Like say, for example, low oxygen in the blood or blood pressure issues. But he said that's not, because there are certain hormones that the kidneys and the adrenals help to make and, put into the system that actually regulate your blood pressure and will also, you will not be able to actually hold oxygen. Your cells will not be able to uptake oxygen, without this certain hormone that also has a tendency to regulate blood pressure.
What happens for like people, like say myself, like having an appendix removed, or if you have one of those vital organs taken out, or even like part of it taken out? What happens with that?
Well, mostly, you've got scar tissue that you're going to have to deal with. And I think that years ago, when I was studying a naturopathic doctor avenue, they were saying like you can only have like 3 surgeries. You can only have like 3 areas where it's cut and the scar tissue before it really starts to dramatically result in extreme reduction of health. So I think about people, people are like, they just take out their gallbladder. I mean, you should never really have an organ removed, even if it's not really, if it's stopped working, like say for a gallbladder, because all organs can be regenerated. There are techniques, like even manual techniques, where you can get in with the gallbladder, pump it, and get it going again. The only time you should ever actually have any kind of organ removed is if maybe there's gangrene as a result. But in our society, they just remove everything. So then you have people that have scar tissue from a gallbladder removed. Then they have scar tissue because they had a hysterectomy or something like that. And then they've got scar tissue because they had to have some knee stuff done. Then they have scar tissue because they had fake boobs put in. They're just like, people don't really think about like how scar tissue really affects us. And the nerves really never come together in the same way. So for example, you have meridians, and the planet has the same thing. We call them ley lines. But it's basically the same thing. They're energetic highways that connect up in certain locations across the body and the planet. And when we cut through them, same thing applies to the earth. We cut these big gaping holes. We take out huge amounts of dirt. We suck out oil. We do all these kinds of things. And what we do is we break that ley line. We break that meridian, that energetic system. And this is why, like right now we have Earth that's really suffering right now. And this is a whole thing like my last native teacher, was really big about and talked a lot about, was that, we have all these new age people talking about the ley lines on the planet and how they could produce energy and they could have this and that. But the problem is like we've cut through a lot of them. We've destroyed a lot of them. So with the body and the health, you just want to make sure. I mean, things like appendicitis, you can't really stop because, obviously if it breaks open, then you're going to have fecal tissue inside your abdominal region, and then you'll get sepsis and you'll just drop dead. So those things, have to be taken care of and managed. But, the thing is, I think what a lot of us don't think about is the preventative, like, what could have been done when you were a little child? What kind of diet could you have been given, right? That would have, headed that off, that may have not actually happened.
There's so much in our culture that teaches us everything opposite of that. Like, worry about it later, solve the problem later, do whatever you want to now, and then just deal with the issue later. And it's such an unhealthy way.
I know. I always get down on this, just one of the things that just really aggravates the holy crap out of me. But, whenever I'm somewhere and, like you have mainstream TV and you have the St. Jude hospital that, treats children with cancer, and they're such mind control people. And the mind control that they actually put out onto the population. Like, for example, I saw a commercial from St. Jude. And this is the thing, is like everything that they're doing is experimental. A medical doctor is getting insurance to practice medicine, not do medicine, practice. Which
Right.
means that they don't really know what they're doing. And the fact that none of them get any kind of education in nutrition, I mean, they don't even look at nutrition. They're just told, like, don't even go there. It won't even help. So they don't even have anything that will help you with that. So a lot of doctors don't even look at that fact. But, the other thing that really irks me right now is that none of these doctors can write pain scripts. They're limited, right? And so now they're all becoming like, specialists in nutrition, and they're writing books, and you're just like, yeah, whatever. Whatever. Just keep going on. But St. Jude always gives me, like, whenever I see it, I just, I clench up and I want to vomit. But, one of their commercials was 1 in 5 children will get cancer. And, my thought is, okay, so that means like anybody out there that has, 5 kids, or if you have 1 kid, then the programming is that if your child gets cancer, it's meant to be because 1 in 5, kids get cancer, right?
Doesn't make it sound normal in a way, or
That's it. They normalize it.
Yeah.
And so the question should be like, back at it would be, why? Why is 1 in 5 children getting cancer right now? Well, lots of reasons. Environmental is like huge. Like they don't go outside. They're not in the dirt. They have no relationship to positive carbon, which is actually a nutrient that needs to be absorbed by the body, which you can only get in nature and from soil, where you have healthy and rich soil, right? And you absorb it through your skin. You eat it in the food that you're growing. You drink it in the water. And so when you're in the digital system, which is these cities and paved ways and electrical cities, there is no positive carbon. It's all negative carbon. And Rudolf Steiner, in a lot of his work says that carbon creates the form. It designs the form of everything that comes into being here. So if you're taking in all this negative carbon, you can see why people are going to be genetically altered or chromosomally altered. You're going to see lots of people that have chromosomal problems because there is no positive carbon to help create the form. And so the form is off because you have negative carbon, which there's too much of the opposite type carbon in most of the areas where people live. So, 1 in 5 kids now have cancer because of, negative carbon, not actually touching soil, growing food, being in a positive carbon environment. They don't get enough sun. One of the teachers on this other anthroposophy medicine course brought up that one of the things I talk about in nutrition is a lot of silent nutrient, because a lot of people don't really get that. Silent nutrient is sunlight, not just D3, but actual sunlight, because it has data and information in it. And Native people have known about this for a really long time. There are lots of different types of energy practices, prayer work, shamanism type practices that are dealing with the sun. If you look at Hindu yoga, that area, a lot of stuff is contributed to sun. I mean, you have a whole, yoga, sun salutation, that is derived at you getting out there before the sun comes up and that you connecting with the sunlight and the sunlight coming into you. There are sun gazers, all kinds of different ancient practices, because that is a nutrient. That light is a nutrient that needs to go into your system, and way long before it actually helps to create vitamins, right? Which is just a vitamin or a supplement is just data. Your body's like a computer system, a machine, and it needs the data and information so that it can keep uploading and keep fixing the program that your body is it keeps uploading. And so when you start to miss data and information in that dialogue, that communication, that's when you start to have problems in the program, where the program starts to have issues. And then you're missing, because what's usually RNA or DNA or chromosomal problems, you're missing the information.
Well, it makes sense too when we think of ourselves as light bodies, right? Like we're vibrational elements, and if we're made up of light, it would make sense to feed your body with the sunlight, because without the sunlight, we don't necessarily exist.
Well, I think it's bigger than that. I think that Steiner talks about how these worlds were designed, and it reminds me a lot of my Native teachers and the stories that they told me how this world was created. And that's why I like Steiner, because he he puts it into a vocabulary and enlarges the story, but it's exactly the same story as a lot of my Native teachers, which talks about, the first 7 nations that came to this world. So this world had nothing, it was void. And each nation that came here, brought an energetic type structure. And then through all those, it was built. And it's almost like they're talking about, and, when I was living in Taos, New Mexico, and I was going to the Taos Pueblo a lot and doing work there, one of the medicine men said that, basically the way that they look at the creator is like the great computer in the sky. So you think about that, if this world was created and then everything that came on it, you had the green nation that came, you had the pure ones, you have the blue nation, which, and they all brought something here. And so what if it was like downloads of software and information in order to create this holographic world? And what about the beings? So Steiner says when the sun was created, we were like the beings that live on the sun, which are, I think, ether. I think he calls them the ether. They're like in the ether realm. So when we were developing our ether self, before we became, physical, we would have engaged, we would have been just like the sun beings, right? These beings that live in this very ether mixture. So when we come here, we were the same ether bodies as the sun beings on the sun, but now we are the ones that chose to take on a human form and move through into a human evolution, right? So we're like, work in progress. So when we're dealing with the hierarchies of spirits and beings, the sun beings are always trying to send information and data. And you'll have some of these new age people that'll sort of get it, but not all the way. And they'll say, oh, right now the sun is, bombarding the earth with certain types of energies to help with, evolution of the human being. And that's sort of true, but not totally true. What it is the sun beings are sending information and data, right, to help our structure with the evolution of being human, right, through that process. So they're trying to communicate with us, and in the native way, they have a lot of relationships to these beings. You'll have fire ceremonies, and I've been at a lot of fire ceremonies by people that are, very powerful people, where you see the beings like showing up in the fire that are directly communicating with the people who are there, because it's almost like the porthole for the sun beings to come in, or grandfather fire, that they can come in and they can actually talk to us here about, our questions or information or things we need to know, or just to be in support. And this is why Native people, say everything's we're in relationship to everything, because we have all these different beings that, we're all moving in the same process, that we need. So, we have these beings that come and they teach us things, but most of the time we're not even, directly paying attention to what's going on. But I think that the sun beings are always trying to download us with, information. Because, the other thing that's really interesting about our planet and like in nature is nature has these things that they, have studied for a while, but it's called, adaptogens. And, plants can actually adapt to their environments. If the environment isn't too severe, you know what I mean? Like, we're not talking about, mass genocide of, a planet or the area, but plants have these things called adaptogens. And it was really interesting because I used to graft trees. I'd take an old species part of a tree and then graft it to a newer version root ball. But there's a lot of problems with that, because the other tree, if you don't keep cutting back the suckers that are growing up, eventually that tree will grow and this other tree will grow. And there are people that have grafted trees, like, 7 different varieties of apple on one tree. But I want to go to where the adaptogen is. So that tree that creates that apple that year and the seed that's in it, and mind you, it takes, 8 years to, in a good environment, to grow that seed to a tree where it's producing some fruit. But that seed has adaptive information in it, in ways that tree couldn't adapt itself, but it actually has the information that, like a little data or an application or a little download, right? So it throws it off like software, upgraded software, and that you can actually put that in the ground. And then now you've got something that is ready to adapt to the environment. And a lot of seeds are that way. For example, you start growing seeds, certain types of food, and then the next year you harvest the seeds from that. Then the next year you plant it. And then by the third time you plant it, you could say it's a shard, say it's a shard plant, but it's adapted to the air, it's adapted to your soil, it's adapted to you, it's adapted to your environment. So it actually becomes the medicine to cure what is wrong. So it actually adapts itself to enhance and fix and correct and participate with, right, in the environment. And you do have different plants, like, for example, I think things like this are super cool for that whole adaptogen idea. But they say that usually, say, for example, you have like a poison, oak. The cure is usually around the bottom of the poison oak growing. So there might be a plant there that's decided to grow there because it's part of the cure of poison oak, and also the soil and the dirt becomes the cure. So like, say, for example, you touch the poison oak, accidentally with your arm, you can pick up the soil like right underneath the plant and rub it onto that area, and you won't get the results of the poison oak. And I just think that's, I know that people like to put human beings on a pedestal, but we have no right to be on any kind of pedestal as the higher beings on this world, because plants are spectacular. Nature is unbelievably spectacular with its way that it adapts.
I read something interesting over the summer in creating my own garden, and it speaks a lot to what you're talking about. And it was something along the lines of, if you're growing food, the food you grow for yourself, like that food will help your body specifically, or there's just like the relationship that the food you're growing builds with you because you're nurturing it and tending to it. And so it provides things for you specifically in your body that can be helpful. So that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the thing, is that but you have to have that relationship, you know what I mean, with that plant. I mean, that's the key. But it can pick up the smell of your body. They say that, like if you water your garden in the morning before you take a shower, where your breath is smelly and your armpits are smelly, it can actually pick up your hormone sequences, right? And it can pick up, if you have nutritional deficiencies or if you have a disease, and then it can actually, produce food for that. And they say that, like each person should be growing their own food and staying within, their little area of food being grown, because, it can be specific. And I remember we were trying to get some funding. This is super funny, like 15 years ago. And we wanted to do like some big greenhouses where, we would get some dishes of cellular material from people that say have like spleen cancer. And so we get all these different people that have like different types of spleen cancer, and then we grow food in the greenhouse, but yet we have these little dishes and then keep adding these little spleen cancer dishes from different people, test samples into the environment to see if we could grow, and then create a seed from a plant that specifically was grown and then went to seed for people that had like spleen cancer. But obviously we didn't have anybody that was willing to fund our project.
That would be fascinating, because there's a whole lot of implications there for all sorts of illnesses.
Well, yeah, you could buy seeds for your garden, like the spleen cancer shard, right?
Right.
Or the, spleen cancer tomato, or you could get like a whole, type of seed that, for different things that were just for that particular state. And then, I don't really care so much about why that plant is producing that would cure this. I'm more interested in, the relationship between the plant and the person and the disease. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't work, that's okay too. But not really getting into this whole laboratory, take it apart, and then take the spirit out of it, right? Because I do think that energy moves in different kinds. And this is such a great story. So last summer, I went back and I did 6 months of wild crafting herbal medicine. So it was kind of like finishing all these herbal medicine things that I've been doing since 2004 and finally getting my national certification. But it was all about going out and making medicine out in the wilderness, how to make a poultice and, all different kinds of stuff like Johnny on the spot. And so now I wildcraft all my own medicine. If I want something, I go out and find it, and then, I figure out how to put it together. But we were on this one walk up at this place called Lindsay Lake, which is kind of up by Grass Valley, way up, in the middle of nowhere in this beautiful place. So we did like this 5-day camp out, and every day we would go on a different area of the lake on these long walks and just look at the different levels of plants that were growing. And I had this really incredible experience with wild angelica. And so we would stop at different plants, and my teacher would take leaves off, and then we pass them around and smell them. And what I do is I macerate things, and then I stick them between my boobs because they're big, and it heats up. And then it's sensitive skin, so I can also tell if I'm going to be allergic to the plant or not before I ever ingest it or use it. And so, I macerated the leaves and I stuck it in between my boobs and taking notes, as you go along. About 40 minutes later, I literally started choking so hard, and you could kind of feel, like I could feel something kind of rolling up my lungs, And I mean, I was like coughing so bad that everybody was totally like worried, the look on their face, like I couldn't catch my breath. My eyes were watering. Finally choked it out and couldn't talk for quite a long time. And I remember going back and looking through my notes, because I'll eat stuff. If she handed me stuff and it's edible, it's medicinal, I'm eating it. I'd get like, I would be hammered. I'd be herbal hammered, because I like ate too many herbs. I'd be like, oh, I gotta lay down, kind of a thing. But I couldn't find anything that day that was for your lungs or your respiratory that I would have ate. And then I saw this quote under Angelica, because she told us the story that, like the native people use it for ceremony, and they chew on the root. And what it does is it gives them the strength, because a lot of times when you're doing different types of ceremonial stuff like Sundance, you're not eating for days. You're not drinking water for days, and you have this, exhaustion to keep going, and you have to finish because, the prayer isn't good and the prayer isn't right and the prayer isn't fulfilled until you're done, right? It's done. So the angelical root that they'll chew when they need, endurance, to help them catch their breath, and that was right underneath that herb. And I said, oh my God, catch your breath, right? There it is. And so, later on I pulled my teacher aside and I said, do you think that whole coughing thing could have been from Angelica that I mashed in between my boobs that worked on me for 40 minutes, maybe in my bloodstream? And she said, absolutely. She said, you don't have to. This is why, when you're working with these plants or food or, you're growing this stuff, you have this relationship with them, right? And so they get to know you, right? And you get to know them. And you don't have to be, eating it or making it into a medicine and using it in order for it to work on you. Once you accept it, like, you put it into your boob pouch because you wanted to get to know it. You wanted to see if your body was going to be okay with it. You invited it in. So it was like, oh, look, we can help, with that. Let's get rid of that out of the lung, and let's help her to catch her breath, kind of a thing. So it just kind of amazes me, energetically how things communicate with us. And a lot of us are just not so good at communicating back with it. But I love it. I love, like, now that I could call Angelica, like, through the spirit world, and I could just say, hey, just having a really hard time breathing. I'm really stressed out. I'm really tired. I've got some feats that I need to endure, and I'm praying for you to come to me and help me and assist me and teach me something, that's going to help me get through that point, because now it knows me and I know it. So I think it's interesting how you can, these relationships keep evolving, where, like, the human relationships don't evolve very far.
Like human on human?
Yeah. Like, I'd much rather have a marriage, long-term relationship with, like, a plant, mullein, which I think is probably one of the most amazing plants, than I would, want to have a relationship or a marriage with another person, because there's just so much drama and things where I feel like it's always going backward, where, if I have a relationship with a plant, things are always, like, moving forward. The plant's like, where are you? You coming out to see me today? All right, well, let's sit in the sunlight together. I got something I really want to show you. Looking forward to seeing you in person today. You're like, right on.
I remember when I was in college working on my undergrad, and I had moved into my very first studio all by myself, my own place to live, and I was super excited about it. My mom, her gift to me, she had gotten me a house plant, and she's like, I got you a plant because I'll know that if you're taking care of your plant, you're taking care of yourself. And I think I ended up killing the plant within a few months, but it stuck with me. And so I think about that a lot with all the plants that I've acquired since, and the plants that I've been able to keep with me for a really long time. Just the feedback that the plant can give you. They're these mirrors, because if you're not taking care of your plant, why would you be taking care of yourself, sort of a thing. And I think that goes to speak for a lot of relationships as well, because I heard that at the end of a relationship several years ago, and I was told, do yourself a favor and don't ever get into another relationship again until you love yourself. And so I think, like, the whole idea of relationships in general, like your relationship to the earth, your relationship to the sun, your relationship just to the energy, the ethers, all of the things, it can be so subtle. And I think this is where, at least for me, like, I've really gotten in tune with, like, what's true for me and what's honest for me, because in listening to those and knowing how to take care of the self and just being open to that, you see yourself more clearly. Because I think if you don't subscribe to that, or if you don't tune into those little things, oh no, I'm fine, everything's great, then you start manifesting all these, like, physical ailments and all the weird stuff. Or, like, you can, even not just in the organs, but just in, like, the way people carry themselves within their muscle structure. Because what is it? More than 85% of our communication is nonverbal. So it makes sense that we would be able to form these relationships with plants, animals, things that are nonverbal, because we we can communicate with them, because so much of our communication is nonverbal. We emphasize so much of like words and logic, and people are so almighty and powerful because we can use words to have these conversations and think about abstract things, but it's disconnected us in so many ways.
Yeah, I think from using like, our sense organs. I mean, words that Steiner uses, but using our senses, of intention and perception and a lot of these other things to navigate our world. And I think, dealing with the brain, like, my big thing is the brain and getting the brain to function. And it was interesting. I was listening to one of these in my class today. There are some of these health, even though they're studying like anthroposophy medicine and, some of these really kind of out of the box stuff and utilizing them, they're still really caught up in these really huge levels of trauma. So a lot of the time during these courses, kind of when it's talking period, like I just don't talk. I'll just say, I don't really have anything to add. Because they talk about, being in these, and you could feel like, even though they're being positive about it, you can feel like the weight of it. But, there was this nurse who was talking about, really having to listen to people, when they come in to try to help assimilate, what may be wrong with them. And then there was this therapist that was talking about how, she just pretty much lets people talk for like an hour long. And it takes several sessions to unravel stuff. And I was thinking to myself, you know what? I just reboot them. Lay down. We're going to reboot you out of your junk. And then we're going to see what's there. Then we're going to deal with whatever else is there. But I think when people are like left hemisphere lateralized like that, they just get caught up in this digital world of nonsense, like language and, this is right and that's wrong, and, judgment of other people, to where it creates like madness. They're obsessed with controlling people, and just a lot of the other stuff that's going on, like I think about the intensity of, like years ago when I was young, I'd work a 9-to-5 job, but, as a conscious being, that's just not something that I would even consider doing. I think I would actually rather live under the bridge than, at this point in time, having to be forced to work like a 9-to-5 job, which is going to create, nuttery, like make me crazy in my own mind. And, there's so much chaos already that we just don't really even lean towards our right hemisphere at all. And a lot of people don't realize, like, they think, well, because I'm left-handed or I do art or, all this other stuff that, I'm right hemisphere dominant. And that's not true. It's not true at all. And a lot of us, especially in Western culture, are living in this left hemisphere, which is reptilian, and it's crazy making. And I think that, like with the whole kidney thing, that plays out considerable, because when you're stuck in the left hemisphere, it's low brainwave pattern. It's a stress brainwave pattern. And it also creates a lot of acid in your system, and it's the disease state. And then, you have the right hemisphere where you have people like, yogis in India that spend all their time there, which is also not beneficial for their physical body, right? Because they're bypassing their physical body. So their physical body will start getting, health problems because they're ignored, or they don't sleep anymore because they've reached a certain level of consciousness that they don't think they need to sleep anymore, and the body rebels and gets cancer. And then, coming into like alpha. And this is the other thing that always blows my mind, is you have all these people that are doing sound healing, and they don't really even understand how all this stuff works. And they'll be like, oh, we're playing this music to bring you into alpha state. Alpha state is when you're in perfect whole brain function. And not many people are there at all. And And so a lot of us, and so alpha brainwave state is the human, right? That's when we're human. So if we're left hemisphere lateralized because we're in stress management and stress all the time, that means we're more in a reptilian state. So we're going to be a little bit colder. We end up being colder and calculated. Center is usually me. Very acidy, and just a lot of other components that go along with that. And I think, like we talk a lot about in spirituality, they talk a lot about this whole torus field, right, that goes through the middle of the earth and human beings, comes out the top. Well, if you don't have a whole brain function and you're one side of your hemisphere for whatever reason is locked off, then you're like a speed wobble because you're not even, and you see that with people walking, like people can't walk straight. They've got one leg shorter than the other. That's an indication that your brain is not working. You're not in balance because one side of your body is shriveled up, right? The brain doesn't have access to actually regenerate that side of your body. And so there are some issues, right? It's not like the other side of the body that may be like more dominant and being, more cared for because that side of the brain is on and open. But it's interesting to me that we have so many people in the new age stuff and all the spiritual stuff that don't even realize like that a lot of this stuff, I think they're grabbing onto things, but the way that they're jibber jabbering it out, it's like pure nonsense.
It's not integrated in any way. And there's just, they get like pockets of it. Or like with the nurses and doctors, and my time that I spent doing art with kids in pediatrics and getting to observe just the interactions between nurses and doctors, like the staff, patients, and all that. On top of not learning things like nutrition, I'm a psychologist, right? And my background is in behavioral therapies and behavioral psychology or applied behavior analysis. And these doctors can't grasp the basics of behavior. And just to know like the antecedent behavior consequence and how that applies to every living thing from amoebas to goldfish to the dog to an elephant to people, they don't get it. And so I just watched so many times where they've like perpetuated issues or like they could have stopped something or we can address so much just through behavior and good interaction and good rapport instead of coming in and seeing somebody upset and freaking out, not knowing what to do or taking a drastic measure and like medicating and sedating somebody. It's like, I don't know.
I think a lot of it is that, people can't be community oriented because they have to like make a decision to shut somebody else down, right? Which means that I can't cope with that, right? Kind of thing. Which there's that reptilian left hemisphere. I can't cope with that behavior, so I need to like shut it down. So there's no, and the thing is like our bodies are communities. We have like 50,000 trillion cells all operating together.
And all the little microbes and then all the other things that live inside of us as well.
Yeah, and you've got like, say, the kidneys are playing out a relationship with the heart. You know what I mean? Like there's all these different things going on and how everything else, even in the environment in a natural way, all lives together, right? It's all a community. It's both, it's like if it's extreme, like a, poison ivy or poison oak, then, that's got something right near it that is going to balance out that extremity. It's going to be the healer of, the poison. And we just don't live that way. We live so much like reptilian. We don't want to try to figure out what this. And the other thing too is like the one thing that we really focus in on anthroposophy, whether it's the psychological or the astrology part or the nutrition part or the medical part or whatever else it's going to be. They're always talking about reflection, like what's happening in front of you and what is that reflecting back to you. So what part of this has everything to do with you, and what you've attracted. And, in American society, we just don't assimilate that. We have this total drama, blah, blam, unfold in front of us. And, the first thing that we do is we start reacting towards it, instead of sitting back going, wow, that's interesting. About 5 years ago, I had somebody that was in front of me acting out like that, and they used some of the same sentences. How dare you? Who do you think you are? Maybe I should look into that. Maybe this is like something I really need to look into so that I can stop creating, this kind of thing happening in my space. So I always think like people don't really think about that either. I think about this.
They don't want the responsibility, or they don't want to take accountability for the faults. If something goes well or something's really great, and people are more than happy to jump on and take ownership of it, even if it's not theirs. But as soon as something is off and goes wrong, like the blame and the fault is displaced and put onto something else. And so it's disempowering in so many different ways when it comes to creating our environments and taking conscious action to do something. But if we're going to lead by example. You can't fix anybody else. All you can do is shift your own perspectives and ways of thinking and try to do something different.
Yeah, there's no leading by example. It's called the blind leading. That's how I feel about it anyway, because this is the thing. We were talking about virus and stuff like that, before in some of our Facebook thing, but this is what people don't really get. And so whether you want to call it the China virus, the COVID, or whatever, coronal viruses. So people want to know, they immediately go towards, okay, well then the testing kits are wrong, because how could an Italian doctor, or maybe it was in Africa, I think it might have been one of the African nations, it was like a doctor in Africa, or it was in Italy, I can't remember exactly which one, but I had a lot of people emailing me about this and trying to explain it to them. And they said, so they took a swab, they swabbed somebody's mouth. Then they took another swab, they swabbed a goat's mouth. And then they took another swab and they swabbed a melon, right? They cut open the melon and swabbed it, and they sent it all in, and everything tested positive, So they think that like it's the test kits that are wrong. But the deal is that coronal viruses are something that are made in everything that lives on the planet. So everything that lives creates a coronal virus. Say, for example, you're not eating a good diet, you're highly stressed, you're not detoxing, not getting enough sweating in, detoxifying. Well, what's going to happen is your body is going to create a virus, because it needs to create mucus in order to put the overload of toxins into, to traffic it out of the body. That's a coronal virus, right? And so everybody has this inside of their bodies and can make it at any time the body needs as an emergency, way of bringing down the toxic load in the body. So that's why like a melon could test positive, a goat could test positive, and a human could test positive, because it's all in every living thing. This is like how we wash overly toxic cells. It's how our body will wash out those cells, and then it has a place to put that toxicity into mucus that is going to be coughed up or sneezed out outside of the body. So, I mean, the thing is that it frightens me. And this is something I learned 20 years ago, right? In medicine and alternative medicine that I'm involved in. I mean, I've been telling people this for a long time. You don't really catch something from somebody else, right? you're just, also highly toxic. So what's going on in that environment where all these people are catching the same thing? Well, is there a lot of chemtrail in the air, right? And the body's taking in a lot of aluminum and heavy metals. Then you're going to have lots of people in that area that are going to be manufacturing a flu virus-y thing in order to get rid of it. So it's not so much that you catch it. If it goes into an infection, like, a pneumonia or something, sinus infection or some type of infection material, then, you can give that infection away. The thing is like a zit that's white, pussy, is staph infection. And people just, go into the bathroom and pop that staph infection all over. And it can react like mushroom spores. And so once it's released, it goes out everywhere and starts to grow. And under the right conditions, it can grow lots of staph infection all over your bathroom. But, the thing is, like, people just don't really understand. Oh, break. We'll be back.
Okay.
Calls are always welcome. The Perfect Triangle with Giuseppe from the District of Criminals. Join me, won't you?
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
All right, everybody, yes. Another hour of torture.
We left him hanging on staph infections.
They're like, what? What was that?
Don't tell me more about my zits. Wait. Oh.
I know. Yeah, well, we're just lacking a lot of basic education, especially in, like the health arena. And it shocks me. And then, like people have appointments with me online, or, I work on people in person, and they'll always look at me like maybe I have like a giant horn on the front of my head, because they're like, well, I just can't find that information anywhere. It's like, well, you're probably not gonna in America. That's why I do classes with professionals in other countries. For example, there is some scientific data that's actually coming out of Europe that they're putting bones into the endocrine system. So bones are now being put into the system of the endocrine, which is, where we get all the hormones. This is another thing, with like a lot of people watched, what the bleep do we know? And you should think positive and love your body and all this other stuff because you create peptides and all this other stuff. But they don't even really know what that means. They're like an animal can smell, dogs, for example, can smell what kind of condition you're in, what kind of stress condition you're in, because the hormones that are in your body are, attaching onto your cells, and then they're creating that chemistry, which can be not so much energetic, energy coming out of your body, but it's going to be a smell. And it might be a smell like that, we can't smell, but the environment around us can pick up and they can smell, right?
That happened to me today at this party. Because I was just at, I don't know, I've just been stressed out or whatever, but at this Halloween party at my friend's house, it was just the cutest property, right? And so they got a couple of goats and chickens and a guinea fowl and ducks and the dogs running around. And a few times during this party, the little dog, I mean, he just kept coming up to me, or she kept coming up with me and just sitting with me and letting me pet. I'm like, where are you coming from? Out of nowhere. But it felt so comforting. Or those times where I started feeling more stressed, like this little dog would just pop up out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's less I feel you or I hear you. It's more like I smell you.
Yeah. I smell you. Yeah. You smell kind of
you.
Come here.
You smell needy. Let me help you with that.
Oh, maybe. I don't know if I got enough meat on me to smell meaty.
That's funny. Yeah. So what's been going on with you? Like what kind of stuff have you been working on this last week? Also, we're going to do a thing at the bottom of the hour, and Kelsey's going to talk a little bit about what she's working on as far as offerings to the public, and I might throw some stuff in the arena there too. But we're going to try to do a little thing where we can offer to the public some stuff if they want to partake. So, but yeah, so what's been going on with you for like the last week? Anything interesting coming up or?
Well, through all of my entrepreneurial endeavors, I've created these like different pockets of things or different concepts and different ideas of like where I could take my business. And so this last week, everything's consolidated into what I want to call the Human Academy. I've been playing on the human theme, the HUE. I had an MYN, but I changed it to MXN. Just to surpass the male-female thing. And I put a lot of thought into this. And I created an online course called How to Be a Human. What was it? Back in spring. And I've talked about it a few times through my own radio show and talked about it. But I decided I'd like to offer more types of classes, right? Or you and I, Bridgette, have been talking about like different ways that I can provide art classes and art therapy sessions online and connecting to people. And so I've decided to create the Human Academy and create it as a platform and a basis to bring in the concepts for education to hopefully tie it all together to the different pieces. And I think anthroposophy speaks a lot because I got one of the pages up right now. I'm just kind of reading through it. I've been reading a little bit about it since you mentioned it a few weeks ago. And I want to be able to provide a platform for people, right, where they can go and find the information, find the education, but also find healing, find creative expression. And I'm trying to figure out how to put it out there in such a way to be a catalyst for creative transformation or finding different ways to get people to tap into their creative side, not to necessarily make people artists, so to speak, but tap into that creative potential. Because through that, we can create arts, use arts in a more conscious therapeutic setting. I'm not an art therapist. An art therapist requires a specific degree in licensing and training, but I'm a therapist and I'm an artist, and I found ways to combine art and therapy and consciousness in different ways. So it's an experimental platform. So I've been working on putting out the platform to collect all the data so I can further my research and keep going through school. I'm trying to wrap my head around how to put all these different pieces together. And so I think to simplify everything, turning it into a school. And I've always wanted to like build a school, or I've had it in my business model as far as like putting it out there, years down the road, or as kind of like one of like the final pieces. But it makes more sense to do it as a first step because I can use it as a platform to kind of integrate different things. And so that's what I've been working on.
Yeah, I always think about like what, same thing, trying to always find a medium to be able to teach what I would want to learn. Do you know what I mean? And like what I have learned and all the different areas that it, and it's taken me 52 years to try to find like a common ground with all of these things that, I've ended up going and learning. There were times where I thought, why in the hell am I going to learn this? It doesn't even really go with any of the stuff that I do. Then later on down the road, I'm like, aha,
Yeah, I like the integral aspect of it, and I've just reached a platform where, like, same thing, like, I know so much about so many different types of things. To be able to put it all into one space just feels really good. And I think the COVID times are making it easier to simplify that, or creating the online platforms, or I think people are a lot more open and available to this type of information than ever before. So I'm just I'm
Yeah.
rolling with it. I'm not
So
questioning myself
they
anymore.
have this this kind of a funny story. So they have I was listening to somebody talking about how Massachusetts has been moving into doing all K through 12 online education, and that they have like one of the best online, education systems. I mean, so amazing that, say, the woman was talking about her son, and they're on the poor side, but they get a credit, and then they pay some money for him to go to online school. And physical school is just not a really great thing for him, because not that he's got anything problems with him, but he just doesn't really get along really well with other kids, and he had been super bullied. And so they put him in the online education. She said that it's so good, and that they're struggling, but if he decides that he wants to take the 6 months, half a year, say he wants to take a cooking class, that the school actually sends them a box of items that has everything in it that they'll need for their cooking class.
That's neat.
The measuring cups, the this, that, or the other thing. So the parent isn't struggling with trying to get these things. And then that way every kid has the same thing in the class. So there's no confusion, on how much is being measured, what's being measured, and how we're cooking and baking or whatever else. So anyway, I reached out to this online education in Massachusetts because it doesn't matter where I live, and I said, I'd really like to teach like 2 programs, like a little kid program, and then, maybe middle school, high school, and, maybe twice a month or something like that. And it'd be like a biodynamic agricultural program. But we would talk about soil, and we would talk about growing plants, and I could put together a curriculum, and we could make sure that the kids had the seeds that we're going to grow, and then we grow and study a plant, study an herbal plant, look at all the different things and whatever else. So I don't get an email or anything for quite a while. Then I get an email from the lady who's the head of the science department, which I know that in, regular academia that they do put agriculture kind of, linked up with the science, but it shouldn't have anything to do with science, right? Because agriculture and the study of plants and stuff like that, I mean, when you're young, it's more of a feeling. Do you know what I mean? It's like more of an integrative experience, right? We don't have to know the whole chemical structure and get a microscope, and look at, that far in, right? We just want to grow things. We want to put it in some soil. We want to put it into a cup. We want to water it. We want to, draw pictures of it as it comes up. What kind of sense do we get from it? How do we, where are we putting it? Where do we find that it likes more? Does it like more sunlight? Doesn't like more sunlight? Which, in all this stuff could be done in the smallest apartment, right?
Yeah.
So I could put together this course. Well, anyway, she said, so she sends me this email saying that, oh yeah, you'd like to teach some kind of agriculture course here at the college. I'm going to need, your ag degrees and all this other stuff, and, just like on and on and on with this nonsense. And so I sent her email back, and I said, well, I went to Steiner College in Fair Oak, studied the biodynamic program and the phenomenology class, the spiritual science of studying nature and agriculture, based on how Goethe and Goethe, explored these things. And, I went on and on and on, and I didn't get an email back. They were like, oh no, it's a nut job.
Academia is tricky, and they want things that are so specific. And
they have to have that they have to be right. And the thing is like, they're just so far, even, being a osteopath, like I'm a traditional osteopath. I studied with old school people. I studied arts that are no longer taught anymore, right? I studied from people that were like 90 years old, and I continue to study with people online from Europe. Like I don't study anything of osteopathic work in the United States at all. Period. End of story. So I always get people that are like, "Oh, you're a doctor." It's like, you know what? No, because I would never even want to be a doctor. It's like I wouldn't even want to have anything to do with any kind of educational system that had anything to do with an MD doctor. No, I'm not a DO. I don't want to do surgery on people. I don't want to inject people with things. I don't want to stab people with things. I don't want to give them medicines that, block their neurotransmitters so they have like, a mind-body split. Like just not interested in any of that. But it's interesting because then when you talk to people, then they're like floored by my education level, right? Because it's so far bigger, you know what I mean, than an MD would have, or a doctor of osteopathic information. But yet you're not even considered. And even in dealing with anthroposophy medicine clinically, usually, the way that Steiner developed the program, like there are anthroposophy medical schools that they have in Europe. And once you get out of becoming an MD or a DO in Europe, then you can go on to further education and study at the anthroposophy medical schools. But none of these people, none of them make their own medicines, right? That's another thing that I have that nobody else does, right? Not only do I give you the medicines, but I make them. I go out and I learn about plants and I learn how they work. And so I make the medicine. So there's like one more level. But I've been denied several programs through Anthroposophical Medicine Society, different branches, because I don't have a DO or an MD. And I think to myself, like, then I don't want to pay for your program. You know what I mean? Like if you can't talk to me like imano, and you can't tell that I know what I know, then like I don't want to be involved with your program. Like I think for me, I'm kind of done with this whole thing where they evaluate you based on what's after your name. I mean, I have a box. I probably have like 35 certifications. And, just all the other stuff that I've done. Like if I try to apply all that stuff to the end of my name, I mean, my name would circle a block. And what would it mean to anybody out there? And would it matter? And how would they feel about that? Like, I like just being me with nothing at the end of my name, and working with another person who's just a person, and just seeing, where that goes, where that needs to go, how it needs to unravel, whether it's nutrition or energy healing work or shamanism work or herbalism or, fixing you, getting in there and breaking apart, injury, and then, fixing it back up and getting you in working order. But being like, a person. And I hate that about medicine. It's probably, in academia, it's probably the big things that I really, really disturb me about it is that you are somebody if you have this, and it doesn't allow you to have, you're not allowed to be an individual, right? You're not allowed to individualize That's what I like about Steiner. He's always talking about freedom. Like, we're in this evolutionary period as humans right now, right? And right now what we're in, he calls it the thinking epoch, which means we have to develop our ability to think, right? Critically think, because it's linked to freedom, right? It's linked to our freedom. And we could end up destroying this planet right now. All these beings are watching us in the attempt to learn freedom as the human being. Like, a lot of these people think that we're just so far evolved and all this other stuff. Like, they have zero idea. I mean, we're not even free. I mean, just look around you. You pay taxes, you pay a mortgage, you have to go to a job. I mean, all these things tell you that you are not free, which means you are absolutely positively not evolved.
No, you're a cog in the system.
Yeah. So right now, he said, since 1410, and this epoch goes on to 3572, that we're in the period of thinking, right? Critically thinking. And that will lead to individualized critical thinking and thinking. And this will, lead eventually to individual freedom within ourselves. And then after 3572, we'll start working with that freedom and that thinking and all the other things that we've learned as the human being, because we were in the feeling development up until 1410. So now we're just in the thinking part, which will lead to our freedom. And then after 3572, or as we're heading that way, then we'll be able to work collectively, right, in the thinking and all these other capacities that we will have developed, and we'll be in a place of freedom. So then we can develop freedom together in communities. So that's kind of like what we're working on now.
572 is a long way away.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, people kind of, I think, get the wrong flavor about incarnation as well, and how that works and how it's going along. And, you want to hear something super mind-blowing?
Yeah.
So, like, I've always had this sense, like, all these people always want to talk about Lemuria and Atlantis. And I do believe that these places did exist. I mean, Lemuria was a whole land mass, right? How the land mass was developed was called Lemuria. But Steiner talks about in quite a few of his books, because he was a doctorate. He had doctorates. I mean, brilliant guy. His thing was nutrition, right? And then he spent a lot of time going into the Akashic records and really specifically looking at things, right? This is kind of really what he was really into. And then he wrote like 300 books. He gave over like 4,000 lectures. I mean, some of these lectures are so mind-blowing. This lecture that I just read for this class was just so unbelievably mind-blowing about, states of alchemy. It just blew my lid right off. But in one of the courses I took last winter, my teacher, and it was like kind of curved towards agriculture, and we were studying esoteric science book. Well, we only, in 7 months, only got through half the book. That's how intense the book is. And so I asked him point blank, I said, so Steiner talks about how we were living with other beings that were not human. And we see a lot of this stuff in paintings and in books, people writing pictures of, like mermen, like that are half human and half fish, and, cantors and, a lot of these other beings. And some of them were like emanating light beings. Some are like big beings. Some are small beings. Some have wings and all this other stuff. And so Steiner talks about how at a certain point, we were all living together here, developing this planet. So a lot of these ancient civilizations, we did not build as humans. There's just, by Steiner's work, there's just no possible way that that was happening, that these were built by highly advanced beings that came from different places, whether they were multidimensional, holographic, that they were actually physical, solid beings also living alongside of us. And we worked together and we learned from them. But there came this moment in time where Steiner says that they start to realize that developing the human being and helping in, us being a sun being spirit that came into the physical form and been incarnating into the physical form to develop the human being in a solid way on this planet, that they had to withdraw from being here because we could never be free. And if we can't think and we can't do for ourselves and relearn technology, rebuild technology, but have to do it from a thinking and freedom standpoint, which means we could blow up the planet, right, as we move towards this next step, because we use it for bad. We use technology for bad or whatever else, and we destroy our own planet, and then we bottleneck, like Steiner says that will happen. The population will bottleneck. So this is a part of us learning how to develop ourselves and technology so that we can meet when we're reintegrated with these beings. So there was a time where you could just, talk to these beings and ask them questions and whatever else, and then they disappeared, right? And they had to kind of block the energy field so that we would have to kind of grow up, think for ourselves, and develop. So what's really mind-blowing is that, I've never really thought that we've de-evolved, right? That just really, like, as a thinking being, it was just never really considered like how we de-evolved. Like, oh, we mastered all this technology and built all these things on this planet, and then all of a sudden we're like, we can't even build a square house. So I never really thought about de-evolvement, but I really, until I started reading Steiner stuff, I never really put it together that we had all these other beings that were alongside of us. So I was talking to my teacher last winter, and I said, so I'm not putting words in your mouth. I said, but I'm going to put you on the spot, kind of like, you've been reading Steiner's work and working with it for like over 30 years. So what do you think about Lemurian Atlantis when all these people who think they're recalling that they lived a life there and that they had all this, technology and all this other stuff? And he said, well, first of all, the internet is not the Akashic record, stating like a lot of these people probably have no idea, where they're gathering their information or where this information is coming from. And or, if it is like solid information that they're putting out for people to listen to or think about. And so then I kind of pressed them and I said, so basically, because these energetic beings were living alongside of us, that they were the ones wielding a lot of these energy sources and powers and built a lot of these structures that, maybe some of us might tap into or see, but it was never human. It was never humans. We may have been, hanging out with them, but it wasn't our development. It wasn't our technology, and we didn't build it. We may have like witnessed it. And he said, that's exactly it. I mean, that's, kind of like in your thinking mind where you've got to come to with a lot of this stuff, and why they would destroy something like Atlantis to be found, at a later time, after maybe we figure out how to build our own technology, right, and use it in a safe manner. But maybe they had to destroy some of these civilizations so that there wasn't a lot left that could be found that we could actually misuse when they had to alter the relationships with us so that we could find our own way. And I mean, you think about that, like how hard that would be for beings who, all different kinds of beings who had such a significant role with us that, really wanted to see us, in the highest human, like evolution as a strong being, alongside with them, and how heartbreaking that it had to be for them, to notice that they're hurting our evolution instead of helping us by them not just leaving us alone and allowing us like toddlers, and kindergartners to figure it out.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Because we're so new at things, or like even when it comes to consciousness, like if 95% of us is unconscious, we're so untapped into our potentials. And I think especially conceptually, socially, in like these social constructs, we're so limited and so boxed in or like closed into the idea of the matrix. And you've pointed it out to me a couple of times, and it's interesting in coming to like the emotional kind of like the aha moments of, it's not, or like kind of like learning how to step out of that box. And I think what I think so much of like with toddlers and having a toddler, like he wants everything now, me now. Like we want things so immediately. We want them to manifest. We want to heal quickly. And you had said at the beginning of this show that your transition period had started like 6 years ago, and if not even before that. And I can relate too in going through like the transformation or trauma recovery, or like a phase or chapter in life or an awakening or whatever you want to call it. It's not anything that happened overnight. It took years, and like 6 to 7 years, or 7 always seems to be the magical number. 7 shows up in a lot of ways, and just the growth periods and the cycles of what we have to see and go through. Like when we think we finally get it, no, there's another step. No, there's another step. Like how much do we really have to struggle and suffer and go through these really intense things to figure it out? But it's like the hot stove thing. Like how many times can I tell him no? I mean, eventually he's just going to do it until you find out and develop the concept for what it is. There's no way to conceive it. And I think that's why art is so fascinating to me. Or I wonder, like in the channeling processes, when we go to the creations, or you mentioned these beings being represented in the artworks and how that stuff is carried through, like we can connect in that creative space so intently in so many different ways. But there's so many, I get like conditioning blocks, or like the behavioral stuff that limits it. And I wonder if it's just because of the material limitations, like the human dimension, or because we don't necessarily understand our being and life and existence from these like multiple dimensional levels. Or when it comes to consciousness, it's not necessarily one state of things. I don't like, it's so, I don't like, I get blocked here. And I think the science gets blocked here. It's like the unanswered question in science right now: what is consciousness? We just don't have any idea. Or like, I just think how strange people are. Like, we're growing miniature brains in petri dishes, and scientists are noticing that they're having these like brain patterns that correspond with consciousness. So now we're wondering, is there consciousness in these brains that we're growing in petri dishes and having? So like people, I don't like just conceptually like can't handle all the information at one time.
Well, that's why we're coming up to a period. That's why we're in this period right now where we just can't be where we're at now. Just
there's no time to synthesize and to
focus on our own individual development. So, we either have all these people asleep,
standard, and
or we have all these crazy scientists doing I mean, stuff that is totally experimental, that could, be part of the undoing, technology that we shouldn't have because we don't even understand ourselves. And we can't even like develop ourselves. We can't get off our hands and knees in crawling state, to walking, but yet we want to develop babies, designer babies,
Right.
like impregnate you with the baby of your dreams that has like no problems, has blue eyes and blonde hair, will have a small nose, have very little body hair, whatever kind of creepy stuff it's going to be. And like, our consciousness is we're toddlers crawling around on our hands and knees and sometimes standing. We haven't even learned how to walk on an individual like level, if we can't individually have health, like we need medicine because we can't eat the right diet, right? We can't eat the right food. I mean, what other kind of power do you want to put in our hands that we could, destroy the planet with? Just saying. I'm just saying. I mean,
Sitting here shaking my head.
So, I mean, you don't give, a 5-year-old a pair of scissors, sharp scissors to run around the house.
Oh, gosh.
So you don't want to, that's the thing is that, it's just going to be really interesting how like all this plays out because we're coming up to a point where, Steiner saw that there were not very many places on Earth that were good or viable, that things could be grown. And this is why he gave, the agricultural lectures and the preparations, that we make to restore and fix the soil in the ground. So the thing is, like, the most important thing on this planet, 3 most important things that we need, which is sunlight, water, good water, like natural water, and food and soil, are all the things that we destroy and also allow the powers to be to control and sell back to us in a contaminated way. I mean, so let's talk about, consciousness. Like, that's zero consciousness.
It's the trick-or-treaters. They're coming out.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Do you have to answer the door? You got candy?
No. There we go. We just got to let the dog out of the studio space here.
Okay, so hold on. I'm trying to do like a little segment here at some point in the show. So let me see if I can do this. Okay, hold on. I'm going to do this. Okay, hold on. All right. Let me see if I can get it to work. Hold on.
Okay. We can listen to the gaggle of the young.
Can you hear it?
Side. Hopefully not spreading the COVID.
Can you hear that?
No, not yet.
You can't hear it? Oh, man.
I can't.
Okay. I'll have to figure out how to I'm trying to make a music that I can like screen share so people know that our segments coming up, our blurb, our advertising blurb.
So fun. The screen showed up. There's a picture on the screen, but I didn't hear anything.
I know. Anyway, I'll have to figure out how that's going to work. Anyway, let me take it off. Anyway, so I'll have to figure that out. But okay,
all right,
so this is going to be the part of the show where Kelsey's going to tell you about offerings that she has, and then, give you like a verbal web link if you're interested in looking or maybe taking a class. So this is kind of our little mini self-promoting period.
This is my least favorite part.
That's why I'm making you do it.
I know. Putting me on the spot. But it's good because it helps me to focus what it is that I do, right? It like motivates me, incredibly motivational. So I hope this carries forward too. But things that I'm available for, you can find me on kelseysweet.com. It's a good way to at least like a starting point to connect into the different projects and different links and things that I do. KelseySweet.com. But I do tarot card readings, intuitive readings. I like to draw out the biofield and the aura too. And so we can get into some pretty in-depth sessions that way. I don't necessarily like to call myself a psychic, but I like pulling in cards and archetypes because I like art and I appreciate different art styles. And it's one way to integrate therapy in a fun way and in a creative way. So we can talk about arts and that sort of thing and art classes. And I have space now, I think, to work with probably like 1 to 3 students in person. I've got, I think, one that I can kind of take on at the moment. I'm available for art commissions, or you can connect with me online too. We can do art classes, like basic intro art, but always involved in my art classes comes the concept of tapping into your responsibilities of an artist and the healing powers of art and how to use art in a conscious way. So there's that little bit. So there's the art therapy bit. So you can find me on my website. You can always find me on Facebook, sometimes on Skype. A little bit hard to lock down at times, but I always believe in divine timing, and if it's meant to happen, it happens. I don't know, Bridgette, is that good enough?
Yes, and she's working on offering like maybe even some group or personal art healing stuff online. So she's working on stuff.
I really want to work with businesses is what I would like to do. I'd like to find like a couple of like organizations to do creative, what do you want to call it? Like think tanks. I don't like using the word think tank, so to speak, but innovative and creative behavior development for applying to businesses and getting to dive into that aspect too. I've got a lot of like things that I'd like to try out. And it's kind of like what you were talking about earlier, Bridgette, like there's so many different things that I can do to help people. So it's hard to offer one service. And I feel like each person or each group that I get to connect with, there's always a different way that we connect, whether it be talking about consciousness or group dynamics or leadership training or grassroots businesses or just event planning, or we can get into the more complex like healing sessions and things like that too. So I don't know. I'm so new at this.
Right. That's good. All right. So I almost forgot, donate. And also we have a back page up at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And we're in Studio B, 8 p.m. Eastern time on Saturdays. So you can go to our thumbnail in our schedule and you can click on that. And there's a back page that has a whole bunch of information about Kelsey and myself and links and contact information. And while you're there, donate. And I still don't know all the different donation areas.
The Patreon up, there's that. We can... Oh, and archives are accessible too, so you can get into the archive.
They're free. It tells you how to get on there free on the archive page.
Go to mail a check. There's always
probably mail a check, but all the things are on the website, and I'm sure that there's links on how to donate, and so that's how you keep us alive. All of us, the management. All of the hosts, everything we do here at Revolution Radio is free. We volunteer our time 100%. Nobody gets paid, but we do have bills that have to be paid so that we can keep our hosts rolling along. So want to make sure that you don't forget to donate to Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com so that, we can have different kinds of shows, and hosts can decide that they want to have another show, and then some of us want to get together and do another show, and so that we can move around the board.
The round tables
and we can keep going creating, and endlessly creating kind of a thing. So and then I was just going to throw out there that this time of year in fall is when I make all of my medical salves from plants that I have been collecting through the year. My pain medicine salve has cottonwood buds that came out in February that I've been curing in some beautiful cold pressed olive oil all year. Also, I picked some outstanding St. John's wort this year, and then it also has a little bit of cayenne pepper, which is more of a cooked powder in coconut oil, but it's beautiful stuff with some local beeswax that has pollen and propolis and all kinds of stuff in it. And then this year I also produced a medic salve for every possible skin problem, including coagulating blood. And then I've also got a medicated oil, which, Ayurvedic, you make medicated oils to go in your ears or your eyes, or you can breathe them into your sinus. That actually, help with scar tissue, infection, inflammation, and all kinds of other interesting stuff. So I've got a medicated oil as well, and I've only got 8 jars, 2-ounce jars left of the pain salve and the medic salve. So if people are interested in that, they can contact me, Conscious of Economics, at Gmail, which you can find on the back page. And so I'm pretty excited. I sold 10 jars of each. And the other thing too is I only collect enough plant medicine, so I get what I get, and then it's gone when it's gone. So and that's it. That's because I'm a sustainable herbalist, and so I only collect what's available in the environment. And every year my pain salves are different, which cracks me up because people are like, do you have that one you had 2 years ago? No. There might be some components that might be the same, but it's not going to be the same because it depends on what the environment is offering me, and then as plant medicine, and then what I can make from that. So anyway, it's a labor of love. I love.
I love making stuff. Making stuff is so fun.
Oh, I just love it. I love being able to, especially the oils, because it's more of a long-term thing, and you cure them, in the dark in your nice little jar, and you have to watch them. And then, at the end of the year, you see what you have, and then you know what you can make. Because I don't make any beauty products. I don't do any of that. My focus in medicine and herbal medicine and nutrition is all pain, inflammatory, and autoimmune system disease. So I don't usually make, the medic salve is very unusual for me. So that's normally something I wouldn't make. But a few of the plants that I put in there this year were so gorgeous that, I harvested them. I put them in oil. I had no idea what I was going to do with them. But they were just so beautiful and outstanding. And I felt like they grew just for me in some of the areas. So I needed to really, and the medic salve has horsetail, it has flowering peppermint, it has a sagebrush, which is very healing. It also is a blood clotting, salve. It's antimicrobial, it's antibacterial. And then also the huge mugwort flowers, some of the most beautiful mugwort flowers I've ever seen. And so that all kind of came together in the medicated oil. So it's just a beautiful, and you would think that it would be really astringent with the sagebrush that's in it, but because the mugwort has a lot of vitamin E in it, it's heavy in vitamin E, it's soothing. It's actually more soothing than astringent. So it's awesome.
I love mugwort.
Yeah, no, I love it. I also smoke it. It's part of my smoking blend. I love smoking mugwort.
I have a bunch of sage, too, that I want to put together in bundles. And I've been trying to put together creativity survival kits, so.
Creativity. Okay, so tell me about your, as we're heading into the end, tell me what you would put in your I just love this. So what would you put into your creativity survival kit?
My pilot for the creativity survival kit started out as a workshop. So we started out with a container and either some putty, some paper clips, and what else did I have in there? I always start off with the Brickstorm too, so there's going to be the Brickstorming booklet. I do Brickstorming to teach innovative behavior, right, or to increase IQ or to increase creative thought processes. But if I were to make a creativity survival kit now, it's kind of like what you're saying. Each one would kind of be different. I really want to like tailor them to different people. But either pens or pencils, some sort of utensil, a journal or booklet, a handmade, or like a how-to. Always with the paper clips. I'm a big fan of paper clips, but just one. They come in handy. And I guess just kind of whatever else is available. String. I've got a lot of string that I like to include in different things, and an instruction booklet on how to use these different tools together. A candle probably as well, and probably some sort of like potion or something intentional, right, for people to carry with them. Maybe a rock. Some people would probably get a brick if it's a big enough kit. It'd be heavy and hard to ship though. Unless they can find mini bricks. But instruction booklets on how to use these different tools in a creative way to inspire creativity. So if you're feeling like you got to create like a creative block or a roadblock up, or you just don't know what to do, or if you get into a point where you need some sort of like solution base, you can go to your creativity survival kit. And it's something that you get to evolve with, or something that gets to evolve with for you as well, because everybody's evolution in their creative process is a little bit different. So you can take something out and you can also find ways of putting things in it. But it's something you get to build for yourself along the way too.
Okay, so I have an idea. We should do a show, or like for an hour, you talk about, putting together your creative survival kit.
Totally, that would be fun.
And then we could
build our kits.
Yeah, and then, then people could build their own kits, and then maybe they could send you emails on how they use, different things, or how it worked for them, or, how they felt about it, or do something like that. And then we could do like a herbal medicine, like spiritual healing survival kit, which would be really fun too.
That would be really fun.
I know, because I have all these friends of mine who are like, they're funny. They're medicine women, and they're so funny. And so, when you come together in some of these circles, they're like, what's in your medicine bag? And you're like, oh man. And you're looking through your bag and you're like, oh, I only have like 2 things in here. I didn't know I was going to get called on the spot. But, and then you have your different medicines in there, and then you share and then talk about the different stuff and what it could be used for, different processes of it. But I think it would be fun. We could do a lot of different things actually.
That would be
in the
fun.
Future.
And then we could bring people together with their creativity survival kits, and they can share together what's in their survival kits.
Yeah, or they could start a group and then, have a group make one together.
I think that would be a lot of fun.
It would be super fun, and then get feedback on it, like what happened and how it went, and, feedback that they got on it. Because I think sometimes like just simple things, because that's what I use in my herbal medicine and all my stuff. I just go out and get what I need, and then I can make different things. And, one of the things that I've been really wanting to do, which is it's artsy fartsy, which I'm not an artsy fartsy person. Like, I'm more kind of a scientific person. I like to brew my medicines and go out and get them and figure out how they're good.
My art too.
Like a kind of maybe more like a researcher. I don't know.
An alchemist, maybe. That's what I feel like as an artist, because I don't always feel like an artist. I feel like an alchemist.
So one of the things that in the Wildcrafting Herbal Medicine program that I was in last summer, one of the things we had to do, which I really was crunchy about, because, it was part of how I was going to finalize the certification, right? So it was pressing plants and then, having to put them in a booklet, you know what I mean? So most of it was like I could do what I wanted to do, but having to figure out, I had to have, I think like 15 plants or something like that. And so I ended up getting it done, and I ended up making these really cool presses, a big one and a mid one and a small one, where I could actually press the different size plants. But now I've been looking at some other people that are in anthroposophy, some stuff that's hanging on the wall during the Zoom meetings. And I saw this just incredible glass and frame, on the wall, and it was all the parts of a dandelion. And so it had all of it, all pressed and then put all over, in a systematic way in the frame after it was all dried. And it was and it had a black backdrop, and it just showed all the different pieces and components and then the middle piece was just, the dandelion leaves and the stem and the yellow flower, and then everything else around it, how it goes to seed and, what it looks like here and, individual leaves. And I just thought, now that I want to do that because I think that is so amazing. I just blew my lid off. But hey, let's go here real quick. So today, prayer poem, nature spell. So today it's "Oh Joy and Sorrow" by Khalil Gibran, which is like one of my favorite authors. And then let's see how far we can get with this. In closing, it says, "Then a woman said, 'Speak to us of joy and sorrow.' And he answered, 'Your joy is your sorrow unmasked, and the selfsame well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears. And how else can it be? The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. It is not the cup that holds your wine, the very cup that was burdened in the potter's oven, and is not the lute that soothes your spirit, the very wood that was hollowed with knives. When you are